Welcome to Chris Denari. Nothing going on with you, I guess, Chris. Kind of an easy, laid-back night tonight.
Yeah, probably one of the busier nights of the year, no question about it. And I know there's a lot of excitement as far as Pacers fans are concerned, because this is going to go a long way, maybe a short way, in determining, what's going to happen over the course of the next 2 to 5 years. You've got 3 draft picks right now, number 6, number 31, number 58. So you have 3 potential additions. Again, there's all kinds of talk swirling about potential moves the Pacers could make with those players on their current roster, but you never know what is a smokescreen and what is real. I think as we move along into the afternoon and into the early evening, just prior to the draft, maybe we'll get some signs from teams of what they're thinking. I mean, we've already seen in the last 24 hours, the Portland Trailblazers make a significant move to add Jeremy Grant to their roster. And I think what it says about Portland is they've got Damian Lillard and they want to play and get into the playoffs right now. And so draft picks are not as important to them. So maybe they use number 7 to trade to even get another veteran because they feel like they're in a win now mode. So it's going to be a very interesting night. I think for all Pacers fans, it's an exciting night because of what transpired this past year. One of the poorest records in franchise history, just 25 wins. So it's always good, Dustin, when you are a Pacers fan, and we're at 0-0 right now, heading into the next year.
Well, and I was going to say, I think what makes this year and tonight a little bit different for Pacers fans is typically we're on the side of can the Pacers get a steal in the NBA draft, because they haven't had a single digit selection in decades. And so tonight it feels more like, okay, who's going to be the guy the Pacers trust to maybe get to that next level, to who's going to be a key part in this rebuild. And I think when you look at some of the names that have popped up, Jaden Ivey, Keegan Murray, Benedict Mathurin out of Kansas, like there's a lot of really good options the Pacers have. It's going to be interesting to me to see who's available, where they're going. I think you have a better idea maybe of who the Pacers are targeting. But again, to me, it feels different because you feel like this player is going to be a key part of what they're trying to build and what they're trying to do in the future, as opposed to, hey, can the Pacers get a steal at 18? Can they get a steal at 21? Can they get a steal at 14?
And especially if you look at what they've now done over the last 2 years, and I'm going to throw Tyrese Halliburton into the mix because he'll be a third-year player. He was a lottery pick 2 years ago for Sacramento. He's one of your starters. Chris Duarte, who you got as number 13, is one of your starters. And Isaiah Jackson could easily be one of your starters. If you are to add to that with the number 6 pick and get another starter, that means out of the last 3 drafts, you would potentially have 4 of your 5 starters. So I think that's important for the Pacers moving forward. Trying to link all of their guys together from a experience standpoint, from a contract standpoint. They have a significant amount of cap room heading into the summer that they can use in a trade, that they can use in free agency, because I think they want to mix. I think they want a majority of young players in this rebuild, but you want to also maybe add a veteran here. And it could be somebody like Miles Turner staying. We don't know. I mean, Miles has said, I'd love to stay because I'd love to play with Tyrese Halliburton. But I think it gives, as Kevin Pritchard said probably a month ago, it gives the Pacers a lot of optionality. And I think that's what you want heading into the draft and into free agency. You want to have a lot of options. And to your point, Dustin, over the last few years, they haven't had those options necessarily, right, because they've been locked into a 18, 19, 20 pick. And then you do have to have some luck and weave some magic. They are going to get a very good player at 6. I don't know who that's going to be. A lot will be determined by what happens in front of them, but they surely are going to get somebody that will be a very important piece moving forward.
And I'd like to try to project some sanity onto any Pacers fans listening, because I remember last year, Chris.
Does that mean that I'm going to get drafted?
I mean, that I said projection, some reality, not in a dream world here. I remember going back to last year, Chris Duarte getting drafted. That caused a lot of stir. There weren't a lot of Pacers fans that were excited about it. And in his first game with the Pacers, I mean, he had an incredible performance. He was a really good selection. He brought some maturity with him. I know he was an older player at Oregon, but he brought that maturity that the Pacers kind of needed, especially considering all the injuries they had and the transactions they made. So whoever they get, I think it's important to remember that this is a team that, not saying they can't make the playoffs, not say they can't, make some surprising moves during the season, but this is for a long term. This is not necessarily going to reap immediate benefits. So I think that, like you said, Chris, whoever they get at number 6, they have a lot of trust. They've proven that they can draft in the middle of the draft and have success. This is for a long-term future, not necessarily 2022-23 success.
Yeah, and I'll go back to 2010. And again, part of the reason the Pacers have these draft parties that are not at Gainbridge Fieldhouse is because it's under construction, the third phase of the renovation. So I'll be at a party in Carmel at Sun King, where they have the big screen television. They have the community area. Then there's also a place at District Tap on 82nd Street. That's where a number of Pacers fans will be. The reason I say that, back in 2010, we had a major draft party coming off 4 seasons of not making the playoffs. And with the number 10 pick, the Pacers took Paul George. A lot of people had no idea who Paul George was. He played at Fresno State, very rarely appeared on television. If he did, he was playing on ESPN or ESPN2 at midnight. So a lot of Pacers fans walked away from that draft, I think, a little bit disappointed because they did not know who he was. I think we all know who Paul George was and is. Yeah. You think about 2012, 13, 14, the Pacers went to the Eastern Conference semifinals in 12. They went to the Eastern Conference finals in both 2013 and 2014. Paul George was a huge reason why. So I think you have to look at things. I've watched some of the workouts. I've sat with the scouts. I've sat with staff people. They do a tremendous amount of work, not just in May and June in scouring video, but throughout the entire year. And as Ryan Carr, the senior VP for player development, said the other day, what a player does in his workout coming to Gainbridge Fieldhouse is not the only thing we evaluate. We evaluate everything. And so that's why I think this process is very interesting to follow.
Great question here from Chris for a lot of people, but it says, sorry for the lack of knowledge, but how often does a first round draft choice actually make an impact in their first year? My answer would be it depends on which end of that round we're talking about, because a lot of times those guys at the top, like we've seen a line kind of between the top 4 and the guys below them in this particular draft. Does not mean that that's going to be the case, but there always seems to be a line in this first round. Yeah,
I mean, Zion made an impact, even though he's been hurt. This year, I think Ja Morant in his first year elevated Memphis to a different level, and we saw that this year. I mean, go back, I hate to say it, go back 40 years, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird clearly made an impact on their franchises in the first year. Michael Jordan, those types of things. I'd have to go back through these last number of drafts just to see what kind of impact these first-round draft picks has made. But I think, to Jim's point, normally, if you're one of those top 5 picks, you're probably moving right into the starting lineup and you're doing something for your franchise if they need it that hasn't been done in some time.
Well, they're putting a lot of money and they're guaranteed contracts, and those are not cheap contracts.
No, but I think the one thing that I like that the NBA did, in maybe agents and players didn't, but remember back in the day, remember when Glenn Robinson came out? There was no cap on a rookie deal. Now it's all slotted. If you're pick number 1, you get this. If you're pick number 5, you get this. If you're 15, if you're 28, if you're 30. And so, back in the day, a draft pick came out, and he could negotiate whatever deal he could get, high or low. So now I think from a money standpoint, where you really prove yourself is with that first contract. And then after year 4, can you turn that into a max deal at your level? And so I think that's one of the things that the NBA and the NFL they've done is that they've created that tier system. So it's, while there's still pressure on you as a top draft pick, the pressure is a lot different than it was 20, 30 years ago when some of these guys signed mammoth contracts and there was no way as a rookie you could live up to that number.
Chris, you said you've been around some of these workouts and talked to guys, and I'm not asking you to say who you think the Pacers are going to draft, but is there any guy or a couple guys who stood out to you, made a big impression when you had the chance to talk to them, or maybe some of the guys that stood out that made – to me, there's always a guy that's a surprise. Like Malachi Branham out of Ohio State is a guy who was probably projected as a second-round pick early in the year, and now some people are saying he's a lottery pick. Has there been any guys that either you've talked to or that you've heard through the grapevine that have really stood out during this draft workout process to the Pacers?
Well, I didn't see the Dyson Daniels workout, but I've heard throughout the NBA that he's a guy that is, out of Australia, was in the G League last year, has been really impressive. He's very athletic. He's a really good defender, and I think a lot of teams are looking for that. I was impressed watching and hearing from Johnny Davis. Now, he's a guy that doesn't expect, I think, to be in that top 7, but he could be anywhere from 8 to 12. And there's been some speculation that the Pacers may try to get a second first-round pick. There are some teams possibly looking for, a veteran point guard. Does Malcolm Brogdon fit the bill? You've heard all those kinds of things. Could the Pacers get a second pick in the lottery? And then, maybe that's an AJ Griffin or a Johnny Davis. I mean, we'll just have to wait and see. But I think you've seen a lot of movement, with players as they work out, as teams have a chance to visit with them. This is a very impressive list of players. And a lot of people look at it, maybe there's a top 3 and 4, and then there's a breakaway, and then maybe 5 through 15 are all the same. So I think that's why there are a number of teams in that 10 to 15 category that really feel like they're going to get a better than a complimentary player in the first round.
And it may not necessarily be this season, but it may be a guy that it's next year. That because there always is that guy. You're like, where did he come from? What? And all of a sudden they blossom. And some guys are not. It takes them a year or two to get that acclimation. And then it happens. But go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna chime in and just say that's kind of what I don't want to say aggravates me, but I almost laugh when people say, "Yeah, you got your top 4, then there's a break, then there's." By that standard, Paul George would have never been a star. Like that, right. You can't evaluate. There's injuries that happen. There's some guys don't fit with the team. Some guys just don't pan out for whatever reason. So it takes time. Like every year we always talk about. I think every year it's whatever the number is. There's a top 4, there's a top 2, there's a top 8, whatever the case might be. When look at Lance Stevenson, look at Manu Ginobili, look at some of these other guys that are selected late first round, early second round. That's why it's a draft, right? You just never know. There's no guarantees with it.
Well, the Pacers got Duarte at 13 last year, and I'm not going to compare him to the previous 13s, but there are 2 guys that went 13 that I think if you redid the drafts in their years, they wouldn't be 13. They'd probably be top 5. And that's Donovan Mitchell in Utah, and it's Devin Booker in Phoenix. I mean, those are 2 all-star level players that were taken 1 pick away from not being in the lottery. So to your point, Dustin, there's so much that it's a roll of the dice. You do your homework. You can do all the intel that you want, but oftentimes, things happen. To your point, the fit is not what you had hoped it would be. Think about Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole just won a championship with Golden State. He was a pick in the late 20s. The fit alongside Klay Thompson and Draymond Green and Steph Curry was perfect. What if he would have been in Detroit? What if he would have been in Atlanta, in Charlotte? We don't know how good he would have been. but going to a team like Golden State where he didn't have an immense amount of pressure on him. And think about it, 2 years ago, he played on a team, they won 15 games. So you just never know. That's why it makes the night so exciting. And, at 8 o'clock tonight, when it all gets underway, then we'll know what direction it's going to go.